Recording in progress.
All set? Yep. Okay. Good evening and welcome to the March 28th, 2023 work session. Let's rise for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Everyone listed on the agenda is present with the exception of Supervisor Byrd, who could not join us this evening. Announcements. Township meetings are recorded for the purpose of preparing the minutes, and the recording is destroyed 6 months after the minutes are approved. This meeting will also be recorded by the teleconference provider. It is requested that all persons wishing to speak before the board shall state their name, address, and the subject matter upon which they wish to speak for the record. In the interest of facilitating the business of the board, all persons addressing the board shall be limited to 2 minutes, unless such time is extended by the chair for good cause. Individuals are requested to remain in their seats and to respect when other persons are speaking. The Board of Supervisors will provide a reasonable opportunity for citizens to comment on any non-agenda items after all agenda items have been addressed, but prior to the adjournment of the public meeting. I want to announce a couple of executive sessions. We had an executive session on March 13th regarding a labor issue, and we had an executive session today, March 28th, just prior to this meeting, to discuss litigation. Okay, first item of business is the DCNR grant application Community Conservation Partnership Program. It's a mouthful. 2023 Land Acquisition and Conservation Grant Cycle. Short version is we want to reapply for the grant to preserve the Barber property, and we have guest here, Matt Babbitt from Heritage Conservancy.
Hi.
Thank you.
My name
And
is
welcome.
Matt Babbitt. I'm with Heritage Conservancy. Do you need the heritage address?
No.
Great. So yep, we're here seeking a funding from the Township's Open Space Fund to match the grant application to DCNR. We've secured a county match of up to 40%, and the state grant would match another 50%. The Open Space Committee of the Township has recommended a 12.5% match, which comes out to, get this right, $69,268.75, and that covers both acquisition of the easement and related project costs.
Just for the public, this is a grant that we submitted last year in, was it December?
In October.
In October, for the same property, everything else was the same, and unfortunately, we did not receive the grant, so this would be a resubmission to the same grantor for the same property under the same conditions, and could you describe there's one change?
Access.
About the access, the
Sure,
public
yeah,
access, yeah.
clarification on public access, thanks. So this would be for a conservation easement, and the landowner is open to the township in the future building a public access trail that connects to the Colonial Park across the street and potentially down to the Perkiomen River. If permitting from the state and such allows, we received a follow-up letter from the Pennsylvania Fish and Boat Commission in November related to the Pennsylvania Natural Diversity Index report for the property that stated that while there is known threatened species in the area, they do not foresee that particular species using the property at the water's edge for nesting or habitat due to the steep and forested nature of the property. However, should any trail work be done within 300 feet of the property, or of the river, that another PIND report specific to that activity, trail building, they do them pretty specific, would need to be submitted, and that would provide further detail and likely require more plans and permitting of the sort. the landowners are open to having a public trail built on the property, however, requesting it be done after their lifetime.
Yeah, thank you. This is a positive step since the last discussion, at which time it was unclear whether or not we could have public access. And I recall some residents had some concerns about that, so thank you for the update.
Sure.
So the request is for up to a 12.5% match. This is exactly the same that we approved for the prior grant submission. Is there any discussion by the board or any questions for Mr. Babbitt?
There's no questions. Just the only other point of clarification is the reason we're looking at this at the workshop meeting as
Yeah.
opposed to the general meeting is because the time frame for providing our motion is like the day after the next
Yeah,
meeting.
the grant application is due by 4 p.m. on April 5th, and the next meeting is April 4th.
Yeah, so we probably have to take the motion in order to adjust the agenda, to take a vote at this meeting, right?
No, it's on the agenda.
It's on our
It's on the
agenda.
Yeah, it's the
Okay,
first,
good.
it's on the agenda. Do you need a, do
Questions from the public?
you have it in your signature?
Yeah.
Any, no questions from the board?
Nope.
Nope.
Terry?
No.
Okay. Any questions from the public? That looks like a no. Would someone like to make a motion? Okay, no. So what the motion would be to provide up to 12.5% of the cost, which is $69,268.75. That money would come out of our open space fund for the Barber property at 333 Salford Station Road. And can you just mention the name of, it's for a DCNR grant?
Correct.
Okay. Would someone like to make that motion?
This is Supervisor Orth will make that motion.
Thank you. Do I have a second?
Chuck Yiser will second.
Okay, so we had Supervisor Orth made the motion and Supervisor Yiser made the second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes unanimously. Again, it's 4 since there's only 4 of us here tonight. Thank you, and thank you for your work and your update, and hopefully we'll be successful this time.
Thank you as well.
Yeah, and thanks to the Open
Sorry?
Space Board, too.
Just
Yes.
wanted to add one thing before.
Oh, sorry.
So, Jason, since we've now allocated this amount of money, when you show your fund balances month to month, can that be reflected in there? So that, you know, right, let's say right now our fund balance is showing 150,000, right? Which it is, but for the purposes of people looking at it, especially like our open space committee saying, oh, we still have 150,000. No, we've committed almost 70,000 of that, so that's what's left to work with. I'm just afraid if we don't make a notation in what's shown in our, you know, in our agendas, that there could be some, you know, people could misconstrue what's available for funding. Because I know there are other initiatives in the township.
So what I could do is give the open space committee like an updated monthly financial, and
Yeah,
if that, so that way they're aware, as opposed to, because what we present on the agenda is is cash,
right,
the cash balance, so.
okay.
I mean, either way, I mean, certainly if you want me to show that on the,
Either that, or you just put an asterisk next to
Yeah.
it saying, you know, this may not
Okay.
account for pending commitments. And, you know, whatever you work out with Mike, he's your guy. But I just want to make sure that everybody's on the same page in terms of how much money there is to work with, that's all.
I understand.
Yeah.
To that note, for your record, the grant is due in April. We would find out if it's awarded in November or December, and couldn't start spending the state's money till January. So
Right.
likely the earliest we would request funds from the township would be January 24.
Great.
Again, thank you.
Thank
again.
you. Good to see you again.
Thank you so much.
Okay.
Thank you, Mike.
297 Smith Road. So welcome to Lower Frederick. I heard you're now a resident. Very happy to have you. Peter, you taking this one?
Yes. So what we have here is I guess the letter actually. Okay, yeah. What we have here is a situation, I won't go into details. The end result is, I've talked to Ken Picardi, who's the solicitor for Perkiomen Township, about how to treat the Sims application. And what Perkiomen is looking for, and Ken is going to prepare this, is a short little agreement, basically laying out what the two townships are willing to do. Ken sent me a letter, unfortunately it was a while ago, laying out this agreement. It works for me. Basically, what would happen is we would be responsible for this project and any future projects on the property, and responsible for the stormwater. The Perkiomen really would not be responsible for anything happening on the property. We would treat the property as if the entire thing is within our township, since the large majority of it is. And we would, you know, be the authority issuing all the permits and approvals regarding any improvements on the property. I'm fine with this, you know, proposal. I just want to make sure that the four of you are okay with it, and then I can give Mr. Picardi to go ahead to put together the agreement, and hopefully, you know, maybe if he can get it together by next Tuesday, we'll have it on next Tuesday's agenda for your formal approval. So that's where we stand.
I just have a couple of questions. There's an item here about the address.
Yeah, I think what happened was, when the Sims first moved to Perkiomen, Perkiomen contacted the post office to establish an address. And I think it was established under maybe a different post office than if we have it. And so now, under this situation, you know, we're gonna have to reapproach the post office and say, well, actually, it's in our township. It might be the exact same address, it might not, but I think we just need to go through that to make sure, you know,
Okay.
for the US Postal Service standpoint, everything is, you know,
Right.
everything works, you know, with what we're proposing.
And the other question I have is, does anything have to happen with the county? Any legal? Yes, okay.
Yeah, I mean, they're gonna have to, the Sims are gonna have to talk to the, you know, the county, the taxing officials, that sort of thing. You know, that's gonna be on them. We can't tell the county what to do.
Okay.
This is merely an agreement dealing with permitting, zoning, those sorts of things. But as far as taxing goes, that's gonna be up to the county, and that's gonna be up to the Sims to deal with, unfortunately.
And we've been in touch with the county, and what they need is just the agreement between the two townships saying that, you know, it's gonna be assumed on Lower Frederick as the taxing authority, that they would then just make the change. So that's what they need in order for that process to move forward.
Okay. Other questions from the board?
The only thing I would advise is when you do approach the county, to make sure that your parcel, like for emergency management services, is, you know, part of Lower Frederick. I ran into that problem, and the first time we need the fire department, they were going to South Ryanford Road, and I live on North Ryanford Road, and they're not connected. So I don't know exactly what the process is to figure out.
It's the same thing.
Yeah.
It's just changing our deed to show, instead of being 34, it's 38, whatever
That's
Right.
the, you know, the parcel ID number.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Okay.
So the only thing I want to make clear on, there still will be a need for a request for something from the zoning hearing board, correct?
Yes, since it's scheduled, okay, it's scheduled for the 10th, they've already applied. They need
Okay.
a variance to the side yard setback. And they've already, you know, moving forward with that,
Okay.
so.
The board will see those applications next Tuesday.
Okay.
I just wanted to make it clear that that's out of the board's hand to make that decision. That goes to the zoning hearing board.
Yeah.
Okay, I didn't want you to think, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
So you're looking for the board to approve this?
I'm looking for a voice vote from the board, basically saying you're fine with this proposal, and I can tell Mr. Picardi to move ahead with a formal agreement that hopefully we will put in front of you in a week.
Okay.
So, there's no objection, this is good
No,
enough?
he wants a voice vote.
No, I can poll each of you. Any of
Okay.
you have any objection to this?
I don't.
No?
I have no.
Seeing none?
No.
We're
Okay.
good to go. I will talk to you Mr. Picardi tomorrow. Yeah.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
sorry this has
I'll
been,
email right now.
yeah. And sorry this has been so complicated. Hopefully it will be easier from here on. At least you know where to go. Thanks, everybody.
Yeah, thank you.
We're happy to be here. All right. Policy regarding fill from Colonial Park.
Okay, so this was, I'd say rough draft, because I really didn't have a template to work from. So I drafted the resolution, and then what I perceived as a policy that may or may not work, trying to account for the soil testing that was brought up from the last meeting. That seemed to be one of the main concerns. Peter has not had a chance to kind of go through this. I also proposed either a hold harmless agreement or something of like a waiver or something of that nature, which Peter can certainly weigh in on. I didn't know how in the weeds we needed to make this as far as procedure wise. So if you go through the removal policy, I kind of envisioned what we would need to make this a possibility for someone. The hours being Monday through Friday, I chose 8:30 to 2:30 to accommodate a roadmaster or one of the road crew members. I didn't know how, when it came to soil testing, you're supposed to test every whatever cubic yards. I didn't know what we wanted to do as a point for that, so that's why I left that blank. I didn't know I wasn't sure what acceptable soil test. I know Terry had brought that up, that there's some different ones out there, because most of what I was stumbling in on when it came to the soil test had more to do with, you're removing, you're more excavating than just taking kind of like a pile away. So I didn't know how we wanted to, or what we wanted to require, as far as what will be kind of a standard soil test, and then also, how often are they testing the material to our satisfaction to ensure, they're not getting, those were left blank, and so this was my first kind of go, when I say rough draft, without having, like I said, Peter has not looked at it yet.
Yeah, I was just wondering, should our engineer look at this as well?
She certainly could. Like I said, I did look at some soil removal policies, but once again, most of it had to do with like subdivision or major kind of excavating. So, I think I added I think we should know what the truck route's going to be. They should be trying to minimize the dust control. It should be left in the condition that it was started. So I tried to account for things that would be a concern for residents, once any fill or material was being removed. So like I said, I don't know, I'm assuming I might miss something, and then ultimately wanted to determine how many cubic yards do we require, for the soil test, or is one test okay, and then by the day. So the other thing is too, I thought it was important to, like, how much they were expecting to take. We may not get, I think our initial ask was maybe the expectation might be one entity, but I don't think we can assume that's gonna happen, so I didn't know how complete we wanted this policy.
You make it too complete, nobody will take it.
So I was cognizant, so I kind of just stopped at some point.
Wow, you really went wild there, but.
I mean, I think I'd like to hear from our solicitor who hasn't had a chance to look at it before?
That's all.
I mean, I don't know if you can do that now or we
Well,
should wait.
I did, it was, you know, I got the whole packet, so I did look at it today. I haven't gone through it with a fine-tooth comb, but generally speaking, you know, I'm fine with the setup. I agree with Terry that if we make it too complicated, people are gonna be like, it's not worth the trouble. So it's a bit of a balancing act. I think the only thing, you know, we might want to consider is, I'm not sure if we really need to make sure that the people picking it up are insured. If we, you know, just have them sign a hold harmless, that's sufficient, that, you know, in my mind, that's probably sufficient in this circumstance. The only other question I have, and this is more applied for Carol, is I don't know if the Conservation District is gonna want to be involved in this in any way. Like, I don't know if they're gonna insist on some sort of, you know, the truck washing, you know, you know, do we need a dump, you know, have something like that there? You know, I don't know if there's gonna be those sorts of things we're gonna have to take into consideration. But generally speaking, going through it, yeah, I think if we eliminate the insurance requirements, the hold harmless form works in this situation that I've already prepared. You know, I'm generally fine with it from my standpoint, legal standpoint.
I mean, Terry, are there particular parts of this that you think are too cumbersome?
No, I follow what Peter's saying, you know, you don't wanna make it too, heavy like this, you know. If you're asking where they're at, Southern Station Road is a state road, so really, we don't have no say on that. If they go out Southern Station Road, it's a PennDOT road, and it is on Southern Station Road. It's only if they start going out Colonial, but I don't think they would. They're gonna go out to a major highway if they're hauling it somewhere. An insurance certificate, like he said, or held harmless. The only thing is, when they come and ask, you could ask them, you know, how many cubic yards they want. Who knows? Maybe somebody will have a field job that will take it on, as long as it's permitted. And I think Carl will admit that, so, but they have to show us that it's permitted where it's going. I mean, if somebody comes in for a small load, you know, in the township, what are you gonna, you know, do we have to go through all that and they go into a permitted place, or, I mean, a house is allowed to get a small load of fill dirt, or dirt.
Yeah, this will no longer be a site under an PDES permit, so that removes the obligation for us to make sure that it's going to another permitted site.
So we wouldn't have to worry.
I don't believe we have that obligation because it's not under an PDES permit.
Okay. But I would still ask to have it tested, you know. And all they have to do is go at a couple different spots where they're gonna dig out.
Is there like a standard test or, I mean, that was the one thing I wasn't sure of.
I could go over and get some tests out of it to start with it if you want to for us. It would cost us nothing to have that done.
No, but I mean, for people who want to do tests, are there specific, is there like a name of the test that we should require, or things that, or are all soil tests the same?
All you want to do is test dirt for any kind of chemicals or any foreign stuff in it, that's all.
Okay.
But I mean, is it a kit that you guys buy and you do it yourselves?
No,
or
you take it to a
Yeah.
lab.
I think that's what he wants to know.
That's what we do.
Yeah.
We always take it to a lab. And it doesn't take long.
I can get the terminology from my environmental staff.
Okay.
And with regard to the erosion control, the township has been, to my knowledge, maintaining a rock construction entrance for going in and out of there because the public works department uses it to dump fill. And there are some old compost filter socks which are either going to get beefed up shortly from the erosion control plan we just had approved with the conservation district. So there are some long-standing ENS controls in there. So essentially addressed as long as they don't muddy up the site or intentionally make a mess of it, and that seems to be addressed within this document.
I agree.
Yeah, and just to echo something you said, Terry, I think, like, if it's a small, just a small, single load of, like somebody brings up their pickup truck or
Yeah.
whatever, that's one thing, but if somebody's taking multiple trucks out of there, we might want to have more appropriate, governance over that, so to speak. We might want to know if somebody's hauling out 15 truckloads of stuff, we might still want to know where it's going.
Well, if we don't, I mean, it's up to you, do we have to? I don't know.
Yeah.
As long as it's a permanent site.
Yeah, we should at least know that much, that they're going to a permanent site. That's a concern. I mean, I agree with you. A homeowner getting like one, dump truck, not dump truck, let's say a flatbed full of dirt that he plans to dump or something on his property to fill a hole from. That's,
So you want the policy to say something like, if the person's taking more than X yards, you need to be notified
yeah, that would seem reasonable.
where he's taking it, and it's approved, a site is approved and ready to control.
That would make sense to me. I don't know about the other board members.
Yeah,
but-
I'm just not sure, does it, are we responsible for where someone takes it? Or is that,
Only if we're under an NPDES permit are
Right.
we responsible.
but if we're not, then
Then we're
that's on them.
Yeah, we're adding a layer to us that might not be legally necessary.
Yeah.
Could that come back to us though, Peter?
Well, if we had no legal obligation, no,
Okay.
no. I think that's what Carol's alluding to, is
Okay.
As long as,
the obligation is no longer on us.
as long as it's tested.
Yeah,
Right.
Yeah.
As long as
That's the key word right there, tested.
Okay.
yeah. I
Then
mean, yeah,
I'm cool.
if there's some sort of contaminant in that dirt,
Yes.
we're stuck with that.
Okay.
So what I'm hearing is we can remove the requirement for insurance, and if Carol determines that we no longer have an NPDES permit, we can remove the requirement for permitted site where they're removing it to. Is there anything else I've missed?
Carol's going to give us the proper nomenclature.
That's it, yes,
For the
for the
testing.
soil testing. Okay.
Yeah, the only other thing I would suggest adding or modifying is, I think the hours and the time make sense. I think you might want to leave a little wiggle room that the roadmaster can designate somebody to do this.
Yep.
Because
That's a good-
he may
that's a
be
good-
busy.
That's a good call, yeah, right, why should it be him, yeah.
Yeah.
So then we'll just see an updated draft of this for next week.
Yeah, if the board's okay with what this pretty much looks like, then, this will be on next week's agenda to adopt.
With the aforementioned changes we
Yep.
just talked
It'll-
about.
yeah, it'll be a
Okay,
new draft.
cool.
Okay,
Peter, you
great.
good with that?
Yes.
It'll be nice to have some of that go. All right, next item, you gonna take that, Carol? 20, the Fulmer Road and Riverside Avenue pavement restoration? Or,
I can do that.
or should Peter do that? Okay, great.
So, the reason this is on the agenda is we're talking about the restoration that will follow the sewer project. We have a project right now to install sewer lines on Fulmer Road and Riverside Avenue. We're well underway. The entire main in Fulmer Road is in. Most of the laterals in Fulmer Road are in. There's still some to do. Riverside work is underway. And we're talking now about what to do with what's left of the road. Because, the project was designed in 2015, which is quite a few years ago now. Since that design, the roads really have only been patched as absolutely necessary because we knew the sewer project was on the horizon. And there's been heavy equipment and extreme rock excavation during sewer installation, which have added to the stress of the pavement that remains on Fulmer and Riverside. And that road was what I'd call a pie crust pavement, which is where it started as a dirt or a gravel road and then pavement was placed on top of it. Doesn't have a proper base construction. In our contract, we required Dolly to restore the pavement trenches, and we used the township standard of 6.5 inches of asphalt. It's 2 layers of asphalt, 2 different kinds. And the bid cost for that trench restoration in these public roads is in excess of $300,000. Now, when that would be complete, the trenches would be the best part of our roads. So, either side of the trenches are going to be cracked pavement. And putting new wearing course next year over cracked pavement isn't going to work. We'd have to go back and we'd have to do more milling. So we started talking about the best way to do this. And we'd like to talk next to Dolly, perhaps negotiate a change order with regard to this and pulling out that expensive trench restoration, asking them to just put in temporary pavement instead, and then pursue another contract for resurfacing that road yet this season. And it was somebody brought to the floor the idea of the Keystone Purchasing Network. And I am at this point going to turn the conversation towards the solicitor who might be able to explain that.
Yes, so the Keystone Purchasing Network is a cooperative purchasing program established here in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. It's run through, somewhat similar to CoStarz. It's been around since the 1970s. It's a little different than CoStarz in that what KPN does is basically a soup to nuts oversight of a project. So they have put out bids and various contractors have submitted proposals under those bids in which basically you approach the contractor, and in our region the contractor is S.J. Thomas. You would approach with a project, and you then work with the contractor on designing the project and working out exactly what needs to be done, what materials need to be used, what labor is necessary, what equipment needs to be used. And then the entire project is, once you design the project and everyone is good with it, S.J. Thomas is responsible for undertaking all the work under the contract they have been awarded by KPN. So it works the same way as CoStarz. In CoStarz, usually you're buying materials and supplies. Here, you're actually buying the entire project. So the advantage here using KPN would be it allows us to work with the contractor to come with, figure out the best way to do this work at the, most cost-effective pricing. And where if we put it out to bid, we would have to come up with the specs, and then we're stuck with them, basically. The other advantage here is we don't have to put it out to bid, so it gives us a little more flexibility timing-wise, which is a key component here. Obviously, we would like to get this work done as soon as Dolly is off the road as possible. So using KPN hopefully would give us a little more flexibility with that issue.
So with all that said, our goal tonight is to request that the board authorize the township staff, including the engineer and perhaps the solicitor, to reach out to Keystone Purchasing Network, sign up as a member of that network, and initiate negotiations regarding this kind of contract. And concurrently, I would initiate negotiations for a change order with the contractors on this matter.
Peter, I've got a question. Would this
Yes.
potentially be cheaper than going out to bid?
Potentially, yes. I mean, I can't predict that,
Right.
but ideally, one of the hopes is it would be. Now, we
Okay.
still, depending on the size of the project, this only gets around the bidding requirements. We're still gonna have to comply with prevailing wage and all those other similar requirements that attach to public projects. This just allows us to get around bidding.
So
Or not
we
get
have,
around, basically, is an alternative to bidding.
so we have a lot more flexibility in terms of timing.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Carol, would it potentially save, because you'd be discussing this with Dolly as potential way that you plan to go, it could mitigate some of the activities they were planning to do with the filling of the trenches and all that kind of stuff, right? Because you wouldn't have them fill up the trenches and then have us mill them down or something like that.
That's correct. I would be having a conversation with Dolly about a change order to remove that 6.5 inches of pavement from their requirements. But we will still be looking for them to put down temporary paving as they have been. And we will have to negotiate, a change order that is financially satisfactory to both parties. And we will do that next.
No, that sounds like a logical path forward. Okay.
So if that occurs, then the township could potentially save a little bit of money on our contract with Dolly because they would not be doing all of the work we had originally asked them to do on the road.
My hope would be that this would represent a slight reduction in the total amount of our contract with Dolly. We're gonna have to negotiate that as change order, because as I said, they're still gonna have the expense of temporary payment, and they did still, purchase all the bonds and address all the contract requirements based on the full price. So we're gonna have to negotiate, to find out exactly how much that reduces this contract price, please.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions from the board? No. From the public? Go ahead, Bob.
Bob Burns, Zieglerville Road. So Carol, what you're saying is with that line item that's in the bid, you don't think you would be able to negotiate the full amount of that line item? Because, I mean, you're talking about one line item, for the restoration portion. They would also not be doing the 1-foot deep cut, and the removal of all that. So if they're just putting, I don't know what spec you have to put, let's just say they're putting 2 inches of binder back over top of the trench as it is right now, and then they would leave it that way, there would be more than just a negative change order for deducting, the 6.5 inches of asphalt, plus, as I said, the removal of that yardage, plus the 1-foot deep cut and everything else that comes along with it.
Was there a question there?
Well, yeah, the question is, what is the line item worth that you guys have the contract?
There are two line items that in some are in excess of $300,000 for the two different layers of asphalt.
Okay. So do you think that you'll be able to successfully retrieve that full amount?
No, because they would have included in that number the temporary pavement that they've been using throughout the job. That temporary pavement was not a separate line item. So it will have to be something that is negotiated with Dolly Construction.
So the line item, if you read the contract, the line item calls for the temporary pavement plus the,
The temporary pavement is not a separate line item in the contract bid. So this all has to be negotiated, Mr. Burns. I don't have a clear answer for you right now.
well, what I'm getting at is if you're normally out there and you're backfilling and you're expected to go ahead and put the temporary paving down within a certain period of time, that should be included in the pipe per foot price with all the backfill. That shouldn't be, the temporary paving shouldn't be in that section. If anything's in that section, is there a special line item for the 1 foot cutback?
Mr. Burns, this all has to be negotiated with Dolly contractors. I really am not in a position to negotiate it with you when I.
I'm not trying to negotiate it
I
with
know, but I
you.
haven't had this conversation yet to this level of detail with Dolly. What I'm explaining tonight is that this will represent a change order with Dolly, and it will need to be negotiated. I don't have details yet because I haven't had that conversation with Dolly. So we will have that conversation with Dolly. We will concurrently reach out to Keystone and start working on this, and hopefully have some information for the board for next week.
Yeah, so what I was trying to get at is if you're saying it's a total somewhere near $300,000, so the board had that idea of what kind of number that you were looking at reducing the contract for. So then if we go to this other company that your guys are talking about, first of all, I guess you haven't reached out to them at all, so you don't even know whether or not they can fit it in this year's schedule. But let's say it all works out the way you'd like it to. When it comes down to how we're gonna pay that contract, the 300,000 was supposed to be coming out of the sewer contract to take care of the trench restoration. So, you know, are we gonna still use that 300,000 from the sewer contract to add to this, or now is it gonna all come out of the general fund?
Sorry, if I could just jump in, I think Carol has said multiple times she doesn't know yet, so maybe we can allow her to have some of these conversations, and we'll have more clarity on this later. But it would definitely, probably, if it came out anywhere, it might be liquid fuels. I don't know about general fund, but I think it's premature. She can't answer any of these questions. So maybe we can table this for when she
You guys need to be
can.
aware of what's going on, so.
We are aware of what's going
Right now, if it's
on.
under the sewer funding, then it's under the sewer funding. If it comes out of the general funding, then it's more coming out of the general funding, which you're absolutely right. Some of that general funding would come out of the liquid fuels. So,
What I'm saying is, it's premature for us to give you any answers because we don't have enough information at this time. So I'm proposing that when we do have more information, we'll be able to provide more clarity. And at this stage, we just can't do that. So, okay, thanks, Bob. Any other questions? Okay. Are we prepared to make this motion? So I think, the motion then would be to authorize the township engineer to prepare a change order and to contact Keystone Purchasing Network. What's the rest of it?
That's it.
And just to contact Keystone Purchasing Network about doing the work. Okay. Do someone like to make that motion?
Yeah.
Terry? Okay. Are you making the motion?
Yeah, I can make the motion.
Okay, great. Do I have a second?
Chuck Geiser will second.
All right, so Supervisor Sachs made the motion and Supervisor Yiser made the second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes unanimously, and thank you. We're all looking forward to more details on this and to see what it's going to involve and what it's going to cost. So when we know, we'll be happy to share. All right. Next item, meeting policy update discussion. Do you want to lead that, Jason?
Okay, so this was from the board's last discussion. And I've given the board copies of the changes. One of the comments was possibly establishing a policy for those residents that are remote, whether or not we would accept. I added something that would, as far as chat and an email, which I don't actually have access to during the meeting. So that was one of the add-ons I had. And I put may or may not make comment. That was something that one of the supervisors had brought up. I added the 3 minutes per person. far as the recordings, I left that open, that they'll be erased after so much time. Also, that recordings shall be posted online for at least a period, so I know that was one of the topics. So we can do that either via Dropbox or YouTube or some kind of, for either a certain amount of time or for all time. And that's pretty much would be the changes from the last draft that the board saw last month. So just determine the amount of time to keep the recordings, whether or not we want to post them online, and whether that's going to be for a certain amount of time. How we handle comments that for residents that are participating remotely, and then just change going from 2 to 3 minutes per person for public comment.
I mean, a lot of what's in here is really, what I'm reading here is, sort of just a reformulation of
Yes.
Act 65.
Yeah.
That's no big deal.
Yep.
Yeah, and just for the public, our current policy for comments has been 2 minutes, and I think the board felt that was too short. We're not encouraging people to talk longer, but we felt the 3 minutes would provide a better amount of time if there was more that needed to be said or if it was more complicated, so.
Yeah, I'm okay with what you've highlighted on page 3, where you're talking about, increasing to 3 minutes. I'm also okay with your recommendation, item 4, which I'll read just so people know what I'm looking at. It says, individuals attending the meeting remotely may or may not make comment. This will be at the discretion of the chair or acting chair. Comment made via chat or email will not be accepted or responded to by the Board of Supervisors during the meeting. We made some exceptions during the beginning of COVID. For those of you who may not have known, during that time, I was chair. I was assisting Mark in running those meetings to free him up to do those things. Quite honestly, it was a burden on me to keep track of the meeting and be an active participant. And we're beyond that now. So, I know we did it, but I don't really see a reason why we need to keep doing it anymore. So I'm okay with that change.
Plus it
Yeah.
adds the aspect of maintaining or having the meetings remotely, because I didn't have anything, I think in the original draft
Right.
that was an aspect, so it kind of checks those boxes too, because I'm understanding that we will keep doing this for now.
Yeah, I think people are pretty used to Zoom. They can raise their hand. We don't need to use
Yeah.
the chat.
Yeah, it hasn't been a problem, I'm just trying,
Yeah, I
Yeah.
understand.
I would just ask that you make it a little bit even more, number 4, as Chuck just went over. I agree with what you're trying to say. I think you just need to make it a little bit more clear that as we typically do, we ask if there's any comment from the townspeople. And people here will raise their hands, and our expectation is that people will raise their hands online if they want activity. The way this is worded, it seems like it's at the discretion
Do you want me
of,
to take that out?
it makes it too much at the discretion of the chair.
Yeah.
They can just say, we're not gonna take anything. And I think we should at least give the people on Zoom the same opportunity to raise their hand as we do the people that are here.
I think what you're saying is maybe after that first sentence to add something like, this should be done through the hand raise on Zoom or something, so
Okay.
people,
Do you want me to
because,
take out the discretion now of the chair, or?
Yeah, I would take
Yeah.
out the discretion, because that means
Yeah.
if you have somebody in as chair, they could determine they're not gonna take any comments
Okay.
remotely, which I don't think is, in the interest of transparency, we should allow the people online to have comments, just like the people that are physically here.
and then just, this can be done, because obviously I know what we're trying to control is people just speaking out, so that's the hand raising part, I
Yeah.
guess.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, because they raise hands and then we unmute them.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Or I guess called upon, I guess,
Well, the chair recognizes them, I
Yeah.
guess.
Yeah.
Yes, wanting to speak.
so I
Yeah.
can write it that way, that the chair will recognize.
Is that all right, Marlon?
Yes.
Yeah.
Or someone will tell the chair to
Right,
recognize
yeah.
them. If I don't see
It's a
them.
group effort to keep
Yeah.
track
Yeah, it takes
of
a village.
everything, Yeah.
Okay.
I don't remember where it was, but there was a paragraph about something like about unruly behavior, and I wonder if we should add something in there about threats or violence or threats of violence. Is it?
Here, I think.
Where is it?
Outbursts, sarcasm, insults.
But it doesn't actually talk about physical or threats of violence or actual violence. I don't know if we need to, what page are you on?
I was looking at the bottom of number 3.
Yeah, well, I mean, it says intentional disruptions, but then there's another paragraph which talks about things that are actually illegal. So maybe that's where it should go. Where was that? And you mentioned some law, I mean, if people have behavior that would violate the law.
This is, I think it's right, it's now there for the resolve for
What page is it?
number, page 4, basically the signature page. Additionally, members can request me to leave the meeting when they do not observe the rules or rules of the forum.
Oh, it says may pose a threat to the safety and welfare of those in attendance. So that's what I'm looking for. Okay, it's in there.
Yep, that's in there.
God forbid that should happen, but I think.
Yeah, this is.
We
this is
need-
tool- This has not been something that's been happening to us, it just kind of tools in the toolbox.
I think that's probably pretty obvious. If people do something that is illegal, there will be consequences. Okay.
So this is a Peter question. You ready? So, sometime in the last 2 weeks, I was reading in the New York Times about a court case that took place in Massachusetts, where this woman came to complain about her tax bill. And she went to the select board, and she made a big stink. And then maybe she accused the board members of being, so I'll let you pick the fascist 20th century dictator. You use the one you want to use. And then the board asked her to be quiet, and then they told her to leave. And this went to the Supreme Court in Massachusetts, and they looked in their constitution and they said, you know what? She can call you that nasty name. And they decided in her favor that that was acceptable. Or I should say, she could not be removed because of that. Not that I encourage people to do that, but
No, removal from a public meeting, kind of treads on certain constitutional
Yep.
rights.
right.
Yeah, free speech.
And so it really boils down to, if the person is a true is a threat to, anyone at the meeting, or is disrupting the meeting so much that it's unable to, whoever's meeting is unable to get their business done. Though, that's a situation where you can kind of remove people. But a lot of times, and I think it's reflected in this draft policy, what the group meeting will do is they don't remove the person, they just stop the meeting.
Yeah.
And they'll say, we'll just, fine, we're done, we're out of here, bye. And, so that kind of avoids that whole issue. And I've even had, I've had police chiefs flat out say, we're not gonna remove people from meetings because of these constitutional issues, and they really don't like to do that. So usually, probably, if you really are in that situation, many times it's like, okay, we're done, we're just gonna, stop the meeting, walk, go away and hold it again at a later date. And also, if the person then comes back to the later meeting and is disruptive or threatening at that later meeting, and then at that point we remove them, we have a much better case, to say, look, we had no other choice. We've tried we've tried to deal with this issue without treading on their constitutional rights, and, you know, they've blown that up in our faces, and so this is really the last option we have.
Yeah, unfortunately, I think people are allowed to, I'm not encouraging anyone, but you're allowed to name call, but when it comes to threats to physical safety or welfare, or we literally can't hold our meeting, that's where the line is. Okay.
Yeah, the only other comment, were you ready to move on, or?
I wanted to talk about the recording.
Oh,
Do we?
well, just while we were on that
Oh.
subject, if that's okay.
Yeah,
I'm not sure on page 3, item 5, I'm not sure whether the word prohibited is the right word to be using there. Discouraged, I don't know.
what
But
paragraph is that?
it's this word here. I'm just questioning the use of that
Page
word,
3.
prohibited. That maybe it should say discouraged, or we say not tolerated in a few places.
Yeah, we can't prohibit it.
Yeah,
Prohibited is kind of strong, it does work,
Why don't we just delete that sentence?
but yeah, I mean.
Because that goes into disruption, which is already addressed earlier.
Yes.
I would just delete it, yeah.
So take it out.
Yeah, I mean, what we're talking about is if there's people in the audience who are being loud and disruptive, we can't prohibit that, but we can't go on with our meeting if that occurs, so that's kind of another issue. Anything else? I think the next thing to discuss is our recording policy, which is on page 5, about how long we should keep our recordings. I mean, I think we should keep them for a reasonable amount of time, certainly no longer than 6 months. I mean, I think even 3 months is probably enough after the minutes are approved, but I know we've talked before about posting recordings of our meetings. We just haven't figured out how to do that.
so I guess we're looking at page 5 and what you've highlighted, and
Yeah, paragraph B.
Yes.
I wanted to just make sure I understood what the blanks are for. It says, recording shall be posted online for at least a period of blank. I understand that part. On blank. What's the on blank?
Oh, that would be the medium that we.
Oh, okay.
Whether we do it, it was suggested to me, like, we could do, because we already have the Dropbox. I
Okay.
make that available to Siobhan to do the minutes, that I can do a link, or the YouTube, which I know residents have brought up. So I left that open, or we could just say some media, and then, I find something, that works for us, and then create that, where, if the board's interested in posting them online.
I would just, maybe just say publicly available, whatever the right word is,
Okay.
platform.
I mean,
On a
Right.
publicly available platform, yeah.
Yeah,
or just like on a public platform, does that make sense? Or,
yeah, whatever. I just,
Okay.
as opposed to trying to make it specific, because we don't know what we're gonna do. Yeah,
Right, like I
yeah.
said, I left that open so that,
Yeah.
and if public platform's sufficient, which is
Yeah.
essentially getting it online, that's what, okay?
So if we make them available to the public, we don't need to really hold on to them very long.
I think that's why it would go hand in hand, and certainly, yeah, if they're available online, and that, then we could either go back to what the policy was after the minutes, or, once again, just, because the other part of this, and I know I don't want to muck it up, and that's why I added Board of Supervisors meetings, is because, like, the recordings for the volunteer boards, is my suggestion is those get erased as soon as the minutes are approved, because
Yeah.
that's, I've not been somewhere where we were recording volunteer board meetings. So that's kind of gotten, that's kind of gotten part of the, you know, as part of the policy, so that was that's why I kind of left this one open and added the Board of Supervisor meeting, so it was very, you know, that that the possibility we may handle that differently, or we can say for all meetings, the same amount of time. I don't know that we have an interest to post the volunteer board meetings online anywhere, or I don't know that that's been something that's been asked about or something before, so.
And, you know, honestly, they don't really need to be recorded unless they need them to do the minutes.
Correct, correct.
So, yeah, I agree.
I mean, we used to just use that little portable,
Yeah,
portable recorder.
I think normally the only meeting that would be probably the planning commission. Those would be one meetings but usually that was 4 minutes. Because if you've got someone who's, maybe you don't have a secretary who's doing the minutes and they need the recording, but I've not done it so we've been doing it for EAC, open space.
Right.
All of the, because that's, the way we have our Zoom set up, that's how it kind of it starts out.
Yeah.
So we've just been rolling, it looks like we've just been doing that since we've been on Zoom.
But the only group that's using this portable recorder is our group?
Correct.
Okay.
so those are the recordings we're talking about.
So that would be I didn't, so, and I guess I didn't specify, so I guess that would be something else for the board to decide. Do we want to make, I mean, right now, obviously, the visual is, you know, they can see the board, you can't see anything else. If it's just the digital recording, if we want to specify, or,
I mean, so just for the public, there is a time investment involved in doing this, and we have a small staff, so I think it does take a long time to save and upload a Zoom video, a long time, and we don't really want our staff taking up hours of their day doing this. The recording takes less time, so I'd be in favor certainly initially of doing the audio
The audio.
only, and then we can, you know, revisit that if it's more logistically feasible in the future. I just don't think we should put additional burden on our small staff
so I can put.
at this point.
I can put audio in front of recording shall be posted online.
I mean, a recording's a recording,
Yeah.
so,
Do we,
Does it-
do we want to keep it out online forever? Is that something that matters or doesn't matter? I don't know. I have no experience with YouTube. I don't know if you have to pay for that, or, I mean,
No.
in most cases, I don't know if you get a certain amount of memory before you,
no, you don't pay because they put commercials on.
okay.
Yeah,
Although with the audios, I
I don't know.
I help out with a group, an adult ed group, and, you know, I'll record the Zoom meetings, and then when it's done, I'll upload the recording to YouTube. And no, there's no limit there.
okay.
It's just that sometimes there are hiccups where, you know, seems like it's 95% there, and then I come back an hour later and the computer's still, and I don't know why it's still 95%.
Well, that's why I figured I would give it
Yeah.
a shot and see what works. And
Right.
once again, the Dropbox links, the Dropbox link would be the easiest.
Right.
Because I'm already doing that. So that was a suggestion by one of the residents. So, and then we just leave it out there for, I mean, that's really the only decision.
If it's on YouTube, it can just stay there.
I mean, I'll look at YouTube first because that seems to be the most available medium, and many people are familiar with that, so that I'm not gonna try to
Yeah.
find something.
And it doesn't cost us anything in terms of space or storage.
And YouTube doesn't seem like it's going away, so.
No.
I mean, that would be, I don't wanna pick a medium that, so. I'll look at YouTube first, audio recordings, and then that'll be out there for forever, as long as YouTube's around. And then, as far as the recording being raised, how long does the board like us to keep the recordings?
Well,
In
the
how-
recordings are going to be on YouTube, so We don't really need to keep them very long.
I mean, do you want to do it after the minutes are approved? Since that's a normal policy for a lot of places.
If the recording is up on YouTube, we don't need to keep it. Right,
Longer
'cause-
than the minutes.
Longer than the minutes, because there is a copy of it out there.
Yeah, forever is a long time, just remember that. So and I would steer clear of listing any specific technology. I would just use
Yeah,
what the
public
technology.
platform, yeah.
what the
Well, that way, yeah, if we
technology
gotta decide, we
does.
don't have to go, yeah.
Yeah,
If you need to
and
move it or something.
we'd also have to make sure that whatever we put out there is not corruptible by intent.
We'd have to put a disclaimer on it that it is not an official,
Yeah, I
I mean,
believe that's what.
you could help us with that,
I was
Peter,
gonna
to
say,
put some
I believe that's
disclaimer.
what
It's an
happens. We're not
unofficial
responsible.
record.
So,
Once it's out there, we're not responsible.
so what you can do with YouTube, when I post a video, and then there's like a static image, a picture, that I upload to YouTube, and that static picture, usually if it's somebody presenting, it's, so-and-so's presenting about whatever, and that's what everybody sees to begin with. So you can have a standard boilerplate,
Okay. Oh,
static picture.
that they know it's our recording. Is that what, is that?
They're gonna see that when they start the recording. I'm not, so you don't have to splice in a separate video in
Okay.
the front of every video. You can just upload this one picture with what you need it to
The
say.
disclaimer language.
Yeah.
And can you help with that?
Yes.
So if strange, clips go out, in Facebook claiming to be us, then if they get that from the YouTube, then, anyway. Terry, do you have any comments, questions?
No.
Are you okay? Are you okay with destroying the recording
Yes.
after the minutes are approved? Okay.
And then the other, like I said, the other part was I had a separate, it's a lighter, resolution for the volunteer meetings. Okay. And that was, I added section 4, comments by residents or other attendants remotely may or may not be accepted by the chair. I can provide them as needed, so. Okay.
What did we decide to do about the other one?
I think we took it out.
Then we should take this out too, to be consistent.
Well, that one had an extra sentence, but I think we agreed to take,
At the discretion, comments.
sorry, I meant not to take that, to take this first one out. The discretion part, we took out.
Oh,
Take the
so
discussion.
keep just say like, residents or individual attending remotely may or may not make comments, and then take out the by the chair, acting chair presiding over the meeting. So it's
Yeah.
consistent with,
And they'll raise their hand in order to be
so it's consistent
recognized.
with page 3, paragraph 4.
All right.
You just make those consistent.
Okay.
Yeah, you still have to raise their hand.
Yeah, and that they have to raise their hand if they're virtual.
They're virtual.
If they're attending remotely, that they need to raise their hands. I think that's it.
So, can I ask a question?
Yeah, of course.
So, well, I didn't know whether you were in the middle of
No,
saying
I'm just,
something.
just thinking.
So what is our policy there regarding the recording of those meetings?
You know what? I made a reference to so I think I have to add any recordings for the volunteer group shall be erased after, so that was the, after the public platform. I
Okay,
had so I made the reference back to our recordings of open meeting policy that the supervisor, so any recordings for the volunteer township group shall be erased after the minutes are approved for that meeting. These meetings will not be posted online unless directed by the board of supervisors.
okay.
So like if there's I left that in there, so like if there's like a special meeting or maybe a joint meeting or something like that or a presentation that
Sure.
we could have the ability to post that online with, so, yeah, that was the, we didn't get past the public platform.
Okay.
I think that's a good suggestion, because there may be certain meetings that have a wider public interest that we may want to post.
Not great, that's why I kept that open for us to be able to post something that's unique, or if there's a presentation of something that group might want to.
So the Zoom meeting that's not gonna change, let's say, for planning commission. When their meeting starts, it'll record it.
Mhm.
It's just that the recording goes away once they're done with their minutes.
Yeah, once a minute, that's,
Unless there's another reason to preserve it that
yeah.
the board directs you to do that.
Yeah, I would say,
Okay.
yeah, if there's something out of, I mean, I know usually there's a supervisor but I
Yeah.
I don't know what might want us, where we might want to keep something, I don't know. The only thing I could think of is maybe if there's, if they have a developer or something, I don't know what would,
Right.
but that would be the discretion of the board if we wanted to.
Okay.
I mean, when we were doing the comprehensive plan, there may have been one or two planning of those meetings where there were presentations that might have value to post. So I can think there might be
Yeah,
certain
I mean, certainly
meetings.
you guys can always make exceptions. I'm just,
Yeah.
this is more just governing our normal mode of operation, and if the board wants.
Any other comments or questions about this?
Just because I'm a little slow at times, just to clarify, statement 4 under, so you're making the two statements similar, the one that you
Yes.
have
Yep.
for
Yeah.
the sub-boards as well as the main board, okay, gotcha. I
And-
just wanted to make sure I understood that
Yes,
correctly.
because they're worded a little bit differently, but they should be consistent.
Yeah, okay.
And I just want to say one more thing. We're looking at a document that's, I don't know, what is it, 8 pages long? 10 pages long? And there's a lot of really useful information in here, like a description of the Sunshine Act was updated about a year and a half ago, so those updates are in here about new state laws that we have to comply with. There's a lot of other really useful information that's kind of all been put together in one package. And I just want to thank our manager, Jason. I know I thought there was a lot of detail in here. There's a lot of detail in here, but it was a lot of work to put this together. I know it took time, so thank you for your attention to this, and hopefully we won't have to do this again for quite a while unless they change state law, which they could do.
So I have two comments on the policy regarding the non-board of supervisors meetings. First off, generally speaking, supervisors don't control the agendas for these other groups. And actually, if you look at if you look at the MPC regarding the planning commission, it actually, says planning commission sets its own agenda. It does have to comply with our ordinances. So if we wanted to put this in the ordinance, I guess we could set their agenda that way.
So
But generally speaking, I think we should leave the agenda up for the individual committees.
So where are you referring to? Can you give?
Page 1.
Page 1, under the last policy.
Yeah.
I mean, you could suggest it, make a suggestion saying. we
No, you're correct.
recommend, But we
Yeah,
can't mandate,
we-
and I
we-
don't think we should mandate.
We should just remove that, you're right. The boards and commissions come up with their own agendas.
Okay.
And then,
I
So
mean,
it's-
could we just say, suggest?
yeah, I mean, you.
And then leave it the way it is?
It could be a suggestion,
Yeah.
I just don't think it should be a mandate. And
Yeah.
then, if we are gonna suggest, we should probably eliminate any reference to the zoning hearing board. They're really a
Oh, yeah,
independent,
absolutely.
separate
Yep,
entity.
yep,
and
yep.
I think we need to try to maintain that as much as possible.
Yep, thank you for catching that, you're absolutely right.
Yeah.
So
Is that it?
is everybody okay with just changing it to a suggestion for that's what the other groups should do?
Yep.
And
Yeah, I'm not gonna go probably out of my way to change, because their agendas are pretty good. Once again, it's about having something that,
Right.
but
I think it's just like if we're aware of something that they may not be, then that would come into play. Any other questions or comment? No? Okay. Bob, go ahead.
Bob Burns, Zieglerville Road. So, the hand raised is fine if you're on the Zoom platform, but if you're on the Zoom phone, there's no way to raise your hand.
Yeah,
So-
there is.
Huh?
There
There
is.
is, yeah.
No.
Yeah, there is.
Well, so this is what I explained before. So it's *6, but there's no way for you guys to know, because as you remember, there was times where I would *6 to
Right.
get in, and I was live, and Mark could see that I was live, and then he would mute me, because whoever was talking, whether it was on the board or whoever it was, talked long enough that, you know, he didn't want me making a comment, so then I'd have to call back in again. So tonight, we actually had one of our people that was out of state that was on, but it's off. I texted him to find out if he was there, so he could actually show you guys how it works. So I'm just saying that, in theory, it should work, but if there is somebody that calls in on the Zoom phone number, they're gonna be able to unmute themselves. Jason, if he's watching the screen, will be able to see that. But then again, he might not. So like if if you guys aren't saying anything, and it was me, I used to say, hey, Mark, can I say something? Or hey, Chuck, I've said it to you several times. So that's just the one thing there. The conditional use hearings, our applicant hasn't been coming in. He's been using the Zoom to call in and do everything, whether he's actually on the Zoom platform or he's on the phone or whatever. So just something else to think about there. As far as the Board of Supervisors meetings, when will they, like this meeting tonight is being recorded. Jason is, as he already admitted, he's already taking that, putting in the Dropbox and sending it to Siobhan so she has it for her accessibility. So when would that be able to be put on YouTube? Would it be directly after the meeting? Because
So,
as you know, there's Diane Jordan's online now, Warren's been here, I've been here, there's other people that have made comments to you guys. I think I mentioned to you at one of the last meetings, I have over 30 signatures from residents that want the Zoom meeting posted as soon as possible.
so as I said before, we have committed to doing this. We are going to do it. I don't know if it'll happen tomorrow or next week or in 2 weeks. If we have something important or urgent happening in the township until we get our additional office person, I can't speak for Jason or Bonnie's time to do this, so I can't answer that, but we've committed to doing it and we will do it. And as soon as we start doing it, we will let the public know, but it will be soon, we just don't know exactly when, so please bear with
He's already
us.
saying he's doing it and he's sharing it to Siobhan. so-
Well, that's not, I can say it's not an immediate, but what I would
Right.
say is, if, with the board wanting to post this online, it's gonna be next day or certainly by the end of this week. So like, this is for instance, is I'm rolling from one meeting, I'm right into, I'm doing the draft agenda for next week.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, but my thought would be, once I figure out the platform, it's like one of the first things I do, unless, like Marla said, something happens on, the day after that, would prohibit it. But ideally, I want to get it off my plate that would be the goal, is not to wait
As soon
long
as
weeks.
possible, yeah.
But it won't be tomorrow, so give us a couple weeks.
I'm not asking for it tomorrow.
Okay,
I'm just
great.
asking for as soon as possible.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's how it works.
Because the thing is, what I know is once the board, should the board choose to adopt this resolution next week, I realize that now I've got something holding me to the fire, so I prefer not to get into those negative comments, because I'm.
Sure, yeah, absolutely.
Yep.
Yeah, you should be aware of what, Chuck kind of mentioned this too, and the amount of, and I have some minor experience with doing this as well, the amount of time it takes to upload this stuff, if you're talking about uploading it to YouTube, or downloading, or whatever the proper term is, I always say it's uploading, but it does, you get a glitch in your home internet, or where, even in the office internet, it'll sometimes freeze up on you, and you can wind up investing an awful lot of time getting it up there. So I'd be really hesitant to say that we'll have a tried and true process in place. I think we're talking weeks to maybe months, not days to weeks.
My thought would be, and granted, we know we've got a ton of stuff going on. My thought would be to give YouTube a shot, see how that goes. Maybe I'll be lucky and get the audio file, but if that doesn't work, then, you know, I'll let you guys know, hey, you know what, this is like, you know, this is bogging down my computer, so I'm just basically, you know, kind of sitting here twiddling my thumbs or trying to find alternate things to do while it's uploading. I understand that, and I think I would express to you guys like, hey guys, this is killing, this is like, you know, so I know there's multiple platforms out there. That's why I think when someone suggested Dropbox, I thought, well, if YouTube or something that doesn't work, at least I know I know a Dropbox links work, because that's how I've shared the recordings with other people who've done right-to-know requests, is I do that via Dropbox, because the files, I'm giving them the whole Zoom file that has the recording and the audio, so that's why I threw out the Dropbox, because I thought that was a good suggestion by one of the residents when we were looking at ways to do this, so.
Anyway, we'll stay tuned. We're very, very, very close.
Yeah, but just to quickly follow up, I did have an extensive conversation with a few people on, I think, what you were asking, and I think the target for getting things posted would be, let's say for a meeting like tonight, would be by close of business Friday would be a reasonable thing. Obviously, if something happens out of the ordinary, there's going to be excursions to that, but that would be the hope, but hopefully that works for you.
Yeah, no, and that's why we were saying as soon as possible. I mean, obviously, there's other townships that are doing it, they're posting it on YouTube. Some of them are doing it in-house and posting it. I mean, we have the Town and Country newspaper here, he's, you know, videotaping the whole thing right now, so, you know, unless we reached out to him to get his recording to share, you know, I mean, there's all kinds of different possibilities, so. The only thing, I hate to repeat this from the last meeting, but here again tonight, unless, I mean, you guys all knew what you were talking about, but none of us here knew what you were talking about on the change of the draft and everything, so we're sitting here trying to follow along with what you're saying, and the people on Zoom, they're, you know, we're not sharing the document with them on there right now, and I know Jason's got some stuff coming up, and hopefully he's gonna be able to make that all work, that we can all see better and everything else, but you just keep in mind that it's very difficult when you guys have part of your agenda and we have no idea, you know, what's on 1, 3, 4, you know, what paragraph, we don't know what we're talking
Yeah, no, that's a good point, and I think maybe we will try to then screen share these, so thank you for bringing that up.
Thank you.
If there are no other questions, we'll move to the next, looks like it. Next item, which is the fee schedule draft again. So I think we're getting real close to finalizing this.
So, from the last meeting, the board asked, we got to the point where we've made the changes, it's gone through the staff, it's gone through the professionals, the board's had some time to digest the changes, so the suggestion was, create some scenarios and, you know, what a permit might actually cost someone. Or, and so I reached out to, I gave Ryan, our code enforcement officer, zoning officer, scenarios and what would the cost of a permit. Now keep in mind, I left out grading, stormwater, anything that's out of the ordinary. This is just strictly building zoning permits. The case examples that I used was a new construction, building and zoning portion only, 2,500 square feet, 3.5 baths, 2-story. That total, I don't know if you wanted to kind of go break down, but that total will be $2,314.50. I don't know if you want to kind of break down.
Well, you can just read
Okay,
quickly
so-
what each one is.
So zoning would be 70, the building, and this is one of the changes that is the 38 cents per square foot times 5,000, which is the bulk of the permit. Plumbing, so that would be 1,900. Plumbing would be $190, electric would be $150, and then the state fee is $450, which is added on to all building permits. So that total equaling $2,314.50 for a building permit for a 2,500 square foot house. Next, I picked an 1,100 square foot pole barn with electric. Zoning would be 50, building would be $418, electric would be 150, plus the $4.50 state fee for a total of $620.50. A sign permit of 40 square feet in the Village Mixed Use zoning district. Be a building permit of $150, sign of $75 for a total of $225. A deck permit, which I know we get, I asked Bonnie about, like, what's some of the normal permits we get. A 10 by 20 deck, building $175 plus the $450 state fee, total $179.50. And then a residential addition, 500 square feet with plumbing and electric. So that's basically like might be what you heard termed as in-law suite or an accessory apartment, including the bathroom. Zoning $50, building $320, plumbing $75, electric $175, the state fee of $450 for a total of $624.50. Ryan wanted to point out that some fees have a minimum set. That's why building in the addition is $320. So these are some different scenarios. You've got, what you're looking at tonight is a clean copy, because I think the last, copy we had a ton of different changes on it. I think it made actually reading a little bit cumbersome. So I don't know where else to take this for the board to consider moving forward with this. I know this has been a long process, and I think if like Peter Carroll will say, it's probably been a 1.5 to 2 year trek, I think. So I'm pretty excited that we're as close as we are on this, so.
So would the plan be if the board agrees to approve this at our next meeting next week?
Yes.
Okay. I don't have any more questions. I've seen this many times. Do you have any questions, Chuck or Terry?
Not right now.
I have a question. And your examples, I'm looking at comparing example 1, which is new construction, 2,500 square foot, to example 5, which is the residential addition of 500 square feet with plumbing and electric. And the electric for number 5 is $175, and the electric for number 1 is $150. I'm trying to square, why would it be more expensive to do a 500-foot addition to an existing home than?
I can't speak for Ryan. Ryan's the one who gave me the number.
Yeah,
The
I
numbers.
understand.
I mean, that would be the only other thing, and if the board would want him to be available, we could do, he did say he would do that for us. Because I did tell him that, the last meeting, there were a lot of questions about the building permit process and stuff like that, which I was trying to answer, but that would be the only other thing that, I guess as kind of an add-on, if you guys had those questions. I don't know, unless he was going through for me, because I will say, I kind of asked him late last week, and he threw this together for me, so.
But these are the kind of things that I hear about from our residents fairly routinely, when they come to do something in the township. Why can I do this? And it's this amount, and then I do something which is smaller in scale, and it seems to be more expensive. I know it's only $25, I think it's $25, but it's just, it's the, it's basically the premise. It's the, that it means a lot. The other thing that I was interested in knowing about, I think I mentioned it, was, it's, a lot of people I know are putting in, gas backup generators. And I kind of I heard all kinds of stories from a few people who were doing it in terms of, is there a permit for the generator, or is there a permit for electrical, is there a permit for the natural gas thing that's sitting in their yard? And my neighbor seemed to, basically what he reported to me is it took a few go-rounds to figure out what, what permits he needed. And I think those kind of things should be, you know, those are pretty common. Just in the past few years, I think just about all my neighbors have put those things in. When the electric goes out, I don't have one, but I know when it's out because I just open the door and hear whose generators are running. So I would feel more comfortable if I knew those things were kind of nailed down.
Okay, I know prior to Ryan, I think there was, let's just say, some inconsistencies.
Right.
And so some of these issues, I think were based on who we had as our inspector, or, and once again, I'm getting this secondhand. So I don't know if that's caused, some of the confusion. I haven't had time to go through
Yeah, I
the permits to
understand.
see if there's inconsistencies there. I will say, with what I envision as administrative person, that is something they would be, I would have them going through. Because one of the things that, looking for inconsistencies and basically having the time and the ability to maybe say, hey, what's going on with this? Because, one of the aspects is they're gonna be dealing with the permits up front. And I know one of the struggles we've had is when someone asks, and I think that's why the suggestion about the examples is, we always, well, what's this permit gonna cost? And
Right.
many times with the building permit, I would always say it's, we won't know till we get it back, because it's based on inspections and different things like that from the building inspector. So that is something I can say would be on the radar for the person that I'm envisioning as part of that, is making sure we don't have inconsistencies. I think that's I know it's frustrating for me, because I think being inconsistent, certainly that gets around, and certainly, if you do something on your property and you're going to talk to your neighbors about it, and I think sometimes that's where, like you said,
Well, I think for certain things that are more common, like I mentioned, the backup generator, and it doesn't have to be part of an ordinance or anything, but, there should be like a checklist, okay? Who's at the front desk answering the window, okay, I'm gonna ask this person about this. Okay, how are you gonna power this, natural gas? So at least, because I think part of the problem, if I remember correctly, the person who was telling me about their dissatisfaction is they had to come back several times to figure out all the permits they needed. Like, the first time they came, they got a permit for this, and then somebody raised a question to that person, how are you gonna deal with, do you need to have a permit for this big gas tank on your property now? And then he said, I'll have to go back and ask the township. And then they went back and asked township, yes, you need a permit for that too. Well, that should have all been discussed in the first visit, right? When the guy came and said, I want to put in a backup generator, the next question is, how are you going to run this thing? You got gas in the street, you're putting a tank in your yard, and that way they can get through the process in one shot. I think that was, so it's different than this, what we're talking about now, but I
I can say,
Yeah.
sometimes people are inconsistent with the information.
I understand that too, yeah.
I've been privy to some of those conversations, and sometimes they don't know what they want. Or
Right.
they're, and so they don't, we're not looking at, we're not seeing a plan,
Yeah.
we're not.
Yep.
So we do our best. I can say, something that I've seen is I think some of our forms are incomplete. I think
Yeah.
that's kind of was my thought with the fee schedule, was to add more verbiage to try to help guide people so that we don't have to take time at the front desk,
Right.
per se. I think that's always, once we get, because that's gonna be part of the learning process for who I hope our new person will be being able to answer those questions. So we're gonna be, they'll be getting kind of the crash course, because I know how, I don't want to be bogging down our code enforcement officer all the time with kind of what I consider mocksmicks questions that, because I know, like, for instance, I had somebody inquiring about a property and what they can do, and, I have the ability to take them so far before I say, you know what, this is as far as I can take you, here's our code, or here's Ryan's number. So I do try to help that because I understand that, I'm here no matter what, and if I can help speed that up and take the burden off of our code enforcement officer, which can come at a cost, or, so that is something, and I know Bonnie tries to do her best, with that and stuff, and I think that's, as we look at our forms and stuff, if we can create the scenarios, and I know generators, like you said, is one of those things, where I came from, all you need to have, you didn't have to, the only thing you had to account for was the impervious space. There was no other part of the permit.
So,
And it would, so that's the part of the building part that sometimes you don't know, based on where you're at with the, I think it falls on the UCC that you've done.
Okay.
So there's other stuff that, you think you're like, that's why, like, even with the pole barn being over 1,100 square feet, if it's under 1,000, it doesn't require a building permit now.
Right.
so
That kind of, to me, I'm thinking, if you're building a structure of any kind of, like, but that's just,
So I just wanted to jump in and just ask, do you need more time? And do you have more questions?
No, I would like an answer to the question asked, why is it more expensive electric
okay.
for the 500 square foot? I don't think Ryan, I'm not asking Ryan to be here for that.
I think that's a
but
fair question.
I'll ask him. Yep.
just
So do you have
email
enough
it.
information, if you get that answer, to consider this next week, or do you need more
I'm
time?
good with it, yeah.
Okay. Dan?
I'm not gonna, personally, I'd like to go and look at all the lines here again and ask about specific line items. I don't wanna hold the whole thing up, but at the same token, there's some things in here. The one thing that caught my eye is about application and permits for outdoor wood-burning heating appliances.
Okay, just
First
that.
off, I don't even know what an outdoor wood-burning heating appliance
Oh, we
is.
did that in planning commission years ago.
Yeah.
We
And-
had a big, long
So-
discussion.
And are they legal to have?
Yes.
Well, so
Yeah.
some
Okay,
of these
there you
things are directly from our ordinance, and
Right.
there may be some things that need to be looked at or
Yeah.
updated, because there were some things that I think when you get towards the end of the fee schedule that seemed a little different. Like, one of the things that I've discovered is we're supposed to be getting quarterly rental reports. I have no
Okay.
idea, I don't know, probably the last time that's happened. So I think there may be some inconsistencies there, but like the outdoor wood, that's,
Well, it's just, it's,
You have
the-
other questions?
yeah,
I'll
yeah,
ask them now.
yeah, I'm not gonna tie up the meeting by going through this line. I'll read it and get back to you. I'm not ready to vote on it tonight.
No.
No,
You know,
no,
I
no, no,
think the
no,
hope
we're gonna
is-
vote on it next week.
I think the hope is we've got a better base than what we had.
Right.
We've gotten changed some of the things that we really needed to change. And that way we can kind of work from here, because and this will be the thing, and you guys, the board has done this, is where, you regularly adopt it at the reorg meeting.
Yep.
So I think the hope is that we get this out there and then kind of work from there and see what, if stuff needs tweaking or.
Just make minor changes
Yeah, I
every
mean,
January.
Peter and Carol, we've made a ton of
Yes, you have.
revisions.
Um,
That was part of the challenge of
Right.
grouping everybody's, or putting everybody's,
Yep.
It doesn't have to be perfect.
Yes.
I think you don't want, it's much better than what's currently in place.
Right.
So don't let perfect be the enemy of do good.
Right.
I'm with you on that one, yeah.
Wanted to add, since it's a resolution, if there's something really out of whack, we can
We
just
just
do
change it.
another one. It's not like an ordinance,
No.
so,
Correct.
so just keep that in mind
Yeah.
too.
Terry, do you have any questions?
No.
You don't? Okay. So is everyone okay then with putting this on the agenda next week? And if you have any questions, you can either ask them between now and then or at the next week's meeting.
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay, great.
Thank you.
Go ahead, Bob.
Bob Burns of Riverville Road. So Jason, you said something about 40 square feet on the sign,
yes.
and I didn't hear what the value of it was, but I believe our ordinance states that you're only allowed a 20 square foot sign.
That's not true. It's in the VMU, the Village Mixed Use District,
Okay,
which is you've got, you have businesses,
right,
so you can go up to 50 square feet, I believe.
okay. So that one you were talking about was just for the village mixed use?
Yes, that's why I specified where.
Okay,
it was located.
I
Yeah.
didn't catch that, okay. And then, obviously, that's a permanent sign you're talking about?
Yes.
Okay. So that permanent sign, they're only gonna pay for that once? It's not gonna be a yearly thing, so?
No, I'm not aware of a yearly, not for signs unless there's, I mean, I can say, I'm not necessarily prepared to talk about it because I've only dove where I've gotten questions on and our code is different from what I'm accustomed to, so. I just looked this up because I figured we have a good shot of getting a sign up in the village mixed use than in the R1 district is kind of what I was thinking.
Right, so I think what I had asked you long ago was about signs in the residential areas or wherever else where if somebody's coming out and putting a yard sign in or the developer's putting up, their sign, can we make those signs, whatever those fees are, can we make them a yearly thing? So if the
No.
developer takes 4 or 5 years, is he paying just one time?
No, because we don't accrue any other costs. We only can charge as part of the fees our actual costs in reviewing the permitting of the sign.
Okay,
So once the sign is up,
it's
we
up
have,
for,
we don't have any
Okay.
further costs, so we can't do another charge.
gotcha, okay. And then obviously you didn't talk about the zoning hearing board numbers going up, so.
Oh, actually.
I mean,
They are going
No,
up.
we bumped them up to, I think, 800,
Okay,
I
thank you,
think, but those did get bumped up.
thank you.
Okay, so next item is FEMA mitigation.
So I'd like the board to table this.
Okay.
And then my plan would be, talking to Carol, because we have mitigation problems, so we did, our projects, we have received our FEMA funding for those. So there's a couple of things that we would be looking for approval. The flood doors, this is the roll curb. I can say I'm still trying to, right now the math isn't working as far as what we got back, and I want to be sure, because what I did confirm was that we get 90% funded from FEMA, which is actually, usually it's 75-25. So there's a 10% if we've not built in a contingency. Now, I know in Carol's estimates, we try to build in a contingency. Now, the cost of stuff today may be different than what it was.
Okay, so
So
the short version is you want to table it
I
until...
want to table it for next week.
Okay,
and-
thank you.
Sorry, yeah.
So we'll discuss this next week.
Get the numbers.
Yes, let's get the, okay, great, all
The
right.
positive part is we've got our FEMA money. I just got to make sure.
That's good news.
Yes.
Okay, 1407 Gravel Pike School Bus Sign Request.
Okay, so this was one of the acts that I was kind of holding on over time for a school bus stop sign request. It's on 1407 North Gravel Pike. It is located near, just past Simmons Road if you're going 29 north. And I counted, I believe, 6 homes that are, looks like it's a shared driveway. And that's where I kind of added RJ, who grew up just a stone's throw from there. It's been been kind of an issue because it's kind of going around the bend. So the request was to put a school bus stop sign ahead near 1407 North Gravel Pike. I don't foresee PennDOT saying no. We'd be responsible to install and pay for the sign. We have done this in recent years. We did for Zieglerville Road, which is our road. We did that in 2018 and 2019. We did it on Salford Station Road, which is state road, but it did look like it took us probably 6 or 7 months. Now granted, I think like most of the state agencies' response time coming out of the pandemic was not great. So normally what I've experienced with signage is PennDOT will want to go out and tell us where we can install. But so why it's in front of you is it may be a small cost, but it's going to take some time, a little time to reach out to PennDOT. And then obviously we're responsible for the sign, so that's why it's in front of the board today. So I don't know, I think this probably request was a long time coming, and I know that's in that area where it's 50 miles an hour, and
Yeah. Well, I think, safety of our children is a key goal, so I'm certainly in favor of this. And again, you say we have to go through PennDOT, so there may be a small delay.
Yeah, and I know, I did know the one thing, and I did reach out to Chief, and I think I think we see this on a lot of the rural roads where the bus stops are more where people live now. It's not a, suggested moving the bus stop. I don't know where they could do that without getting in a car and traveling. It is a tough section of highway.
Right.
So.
So any questions from the board?
So there would be signs both north and southbound?
We could put them southbound. To me, that's a straightaway. I think the concern is the northbound where people are coming around the bend at a high rate of speed.
It's the bend, and there's also a lot of vegetation
Yep.
right near the road, because I've
Yeah,
walked around back there.
Having gone that way hundreds of thousands of times, going north of 29, that end of that driveway does kind of come out of trees. It's, until you're right on it, it's not always visible from a distance. So we could put it both ways, but I was going to focus more on the northbound around the bend, because that was that's what the resident had stated was the real issue.
So would there be maybe multiple signs northbound? How does
I
that
don't
work?
think
Or
you
is
normally get
PennDOT
into
decides
multiple.
that?
Yeah, usually it's one
That's a
sign,
no.
and that's what I mean. Once I reach out to PennDOT, and once again, they'll go through the placement so that, we're.
All right.
Oh. Yeah. School buses. Thank you, Peter. School bus stop ahead sign. Justification, the school bus stop ahead shall be authorized for use in advance of locations where a school bus, when stopped to pick up or discharge passengers, is not visible by a motorist or for a distance of 500 feet in advance. So that would be placement, the S3-1 sign should normally be placed 500 feet in advance. So one sign.
Okay.
And I think that's part of what PennDOT will be verifying as far as the
Placement.
I think this would meet the criteria.
Yeah. And any other comments from the board?
No, I know where it's at.
Okay. So you want us to vote you want us to vote this evening to authorize this?
Yes,
Okay.
may not be able to get it done for this school year, but we'll take care of it.
Okay, well, I'm happy to make that motion to authorize the installation of a school bus stop ahead sign located near 1407 North Gravel Pike, and further authorize the township staff to complete the necessary steps with PennDOT to complete the installation. Do I have a second?
Chuck Yeiser will second.
Thank you. So Supervisor Hexter made the motion, Supervisor Yeiser made the second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Thank you. Motion passes unanimously. Okay. Township Building Use Policy Draft.
Okay, so this was another ask by some residents. We received a request from residents who live locally, but they're not representing an organization. It's just a group of residents who are looking for a place to meet. What I could see was the board had previously discussed this back in 2018. A draft was created back then. So I took the draft and updated it. I also include a hold harmless where it applies, and I did put it, Peter thinks we should have it.
No.
Ultimately, I would like to do a full township facility use policy that would cover all of our parks, which would be the pavilion, pool, ball field, but I'm not ready to present that. This document could easily be incorporated if the board is interested in overall facility or property use policy. So that's regarding, like, we have a softball club that's using the field. We're just having them do a hold harmless agreement. I sent Peter a draft of a ball field use, which Peter agreed, it's just for the short term, he didn't want to hold them up.
But we're going to
um,
address that as a policy later. So
Yeah.
I remember this very well, and Terry, you remember it because we worked on this 5 years ago, 4.5 years ago. And I remember at that time, and correct me if I'm wrong, I think we wanted to be sure that at least one person of the group that wanted to use it lived in the township.
Yes, we did.
Yeah, and I think that's important. I mean, if it's some club, at least one person should live in the township.
Yeah,
If the
I
rest of
know-
the board agrees with
I
that.
know you guys have
Yeah.
stressed, nonprofits and that's what I thought, the draft was very well written.
I
think.
don't know why we didn't pull the trigger, but we didn't.
It
And
was
the-
pretty far along, yeah.
It was
Yeah,
very
no,
far
it-
along, yeah.
I was kind of like, it was kind of a nice find for me. I'm like, well, I don't have to start from scratch.
I think I sent it to you, but, and the other thing, may take a little more discussion, is, you know, what do we do if people want to come and use the building when it's normally closed?
Yeah.
And I think that's a more complicated discussion.
So one of the things, and I think I've talked to some of the supervisors on this, where I came from, our fire company had a mechanism where they were able to remote open at a certain time and close, because we used to have our meetings.
Yeah, but that requires us to upgrade our door.
Well, it
We can't
would.
currently do that now. But I'm just saying, like, if an organization wants to come in, you know, on Friday night and nobody's here, is one of us gonna have to come and let them in and stay here? I mean, I wonder if we
No,
should
give
make
them
this,
a key.
I wonder if we should make this during working hours? I mean, do we wanna be handing out 50 keys to different organizations?
So-
I don't know.
I don't, of course, I don't know how many front door keys we have out there now. I know.
Well, presumably the ones you've given to us, we're good for it, but I'm just throwing it out there
No,
is,
I agree.
you know.
I don't want to create a situation where staff is having to come back, and that's why at some point, when I look at kind of building upgrades, is doing something with it, whether it's a swipe key or some kind of mechanism that doesn't tie us to the building. Because the other part we have is we have to secure those back doors, because that's access right down to the
police, yeah.
ambulance. Now, we
Yeah, the
you know,
yeah.
we do have our second exit down the police stair. So that there's other things we would have to do before we, I'd say, allow stuff to happen here when it's during non-business hours. Because I
So
don't
maybe, I mean, is it possible to approve this and saying it's during business hours and then amend it when we're able to make some building improvement? I mean, what do you think, Peter? How do we deal with that?
Once again, it's a resolution,
Yeah.
so, yeah.
Because that's the only part I'm uncomfortable with. I just don't think, you know, when the building is normally closed, I'm just uncomfortable with that unless we have some way to monitor it.
Oh, I agree. I'm certainly not, I don't want to be tethered to this building. And, but certainly, I think that one of the big things is the type of groups and, but
Yeah.
this was an ask we got recently, so part of this was, do we have a response for them? I'm definitely with you as far as maybe not having some, because right now, and I don't know when the Spring Mountain HOA meets, but I know like the Civics Club, they meet on Wednesday during our business hours.
Yeah, they're
so
here
we're
during the day.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm not looking to just open this up as kind of a free reign, it's just,
I mean, what does the rest of the board think? Would it be acceptable to have it just during business hours and then when we have, I mean, I think what Jason's talking about is if we had a different kind of door, you could have like a little credit card kind of a swipe.
Or a fob or something.
Right, and so, Joe Schmo wants to come in with the Boy Scouts on Friday evening, and so you make it so he can get in on Friday evening and record that he has come in because he's got the card, and then when he leaves, you can't get back in because he's only allowed to come in Friday evening. And that would, so like with the key, you can just come in anytime, in theory,
well,
so.
like I said, we've got other issues within the building, even the people who have access to the keys, because like I said, you've got access to the ambulance, the way
Yeah.
the back doors and stuff, so, there's definitely gonna be some things we're gonna need to.
So right now, there's too much liability at this point. Okay.
And if it's not during business hours, I would agree.
No.
I mean, at least if we're in the building, not that I'm sitting, I don't sit and participate in the meetings, but at least if we're in the building, it's more, I find it to be more controllable, but.
I think there's, like, I agree with Terry, but I think we'd have to do some assessment of the infrastructure in here, how do you ensure that they don't go places they're not supposed to go, like, just like you mentioned, but also get to records they're not supposed to get to? You know, people can be mischievous and don't like to look for the bad in people, but, you know, sometimes I just think needs to be some serious thought and figure out what kind of infrastructure we need to put in place if we want to do this. But there's too much liability, I think.
Do you mean to do it at all, or just to not have it after office hours? I mean, just to,
If the board would want to do it while the building's open, that's fine, but after hours right now, I'd say it's too much liability.
yeah, I agree.
I agree.
So we could consider next week, I'm assuming.
Yeah.
You want us to consider approving this next week, modifying it to indicate that it would only be during business hours? Are there other changes any board members would like to consider?
The other caveat is that no township businesses, they can't interrupt township business if there's something that's,
It says
Yeah, that's
that
in here.
yeah,
That's
that's in there.
Like if there's
right?
other
Okay.
meetings going on, they
Yeah.
can't.
Okay.
Yeah,
So.
it's only when it's available.
So under availability, you're gonna say, you know, business hours. Mention what, you've mentioned,
Right.
you mentioned in other places about holidays and things like that. Right.
So take the 7 days a week,
Right.
Monday through Friday.
Yeah,
And
Okay.
I agree
How
that
about that?
the person who's asking for the application should be a resident, or at least the primary stakeholder in the whole thing should be a resident.
the responsible person,
Yeah.
yeah. And I think we talked about that before.
You
too.
mentioned kitchen in here. Why are we offering the kitchen? I don't know. Can you get into the kitchen without getting into the secured space?
No.
I don't
We
think
open the
so.
door, you can.
Right, but I mean, I
Take
don't
that-
even go in that secured, I don't have a key to get in that secured space.
Take
so I
that
don't-
kitchen out.
Yeah, why is that, I don't know why that kitchen's in there at
I
all.
don't have a search we have already.
Oh,
We already have the group that's using the building uses the kitchen.
oh,
Maybe you can make that on a case-by-case basis and say that I mean, they're here over lunch, and so they eat lunch, so that's the reason, but, I mean, you wouldn't just,
Actually, I mean, normally, they have like an annual, I think like an annual luncheon. They may be in the I mean, they've got access to our kitchen. Now, we can lock the door so they can't get into the office, where they can just have access through the hallway door to the kitchen. So we do have the ability to keep, I think I can lock. We have the ability, I believe, to keep them out of our office.
okay,
So they're not roaming around Bonnie or my office or,
all right.
yeah.
that's a very unique situation. I think
Yeah.
normally they wouldn't want to or need to use the kitchen.
I didn't realize they were using it.
Well, the thing is, that was in that original draft, because I think that's, the board was looking at accommodating what was already happening, I think, and
Okay.
I figured I'd keep that since that's already,
Yeah, I mean, so long as we're limiting it to the office hours,
no, I like.
it's really a matter whether it's a
the
problem with you guys, I guess, you know.
No, I mean, if it is a problem, I think it says in here that the board can refuse or, and we are requiring a hold harmless, and, I mean, do we require them to have insurance? I mean, what if a group is in here and, I don't know, someone sets a fire, or someone trips, or,
Yeah, in this situation, unlike the dirt removal, yeah, I'd want to see insurance from them.
okay.
Um,
And I think that's in here,
Yeah.
yeah.
And the other thing I just, want to point out, once we start doing this, we can't pick and choose who we're giving it to,
All right.
all right?
Well,
If-
I mean,
if
we
the local
can't-
clan- local clan wants to come use it, we gotta do it. If the local Satanist society wants to come use it, we gotta give it to them. So we can't, we probably can limit it to like nonprofit groups, like we can say we don't want commercial enterprises in here using it or something, but even then, that's,
Yeah, but can't you say, like, we don't want, groups that hate groups?
No,
You can't,
no,
okay.
no.
And that's
And
probably why the reason that we did not go through with it.
Yeah.
I'll be honest with
I
you.
remember that being
Yes.
talked about.
Yeah, no,
Yeah, I
once,
think
once
you're
we
right.
open it up, it becomes a public space, just like a public parks.
Yes.
And, you know, that's the way we look at it. And then the second, you know, issue I would say is we have a lot of the board approving this, the board approving that. In some ways, I'd say, you guys don't want to be seen approving the
No.
KKK come using this. You know, leave it at, you know, don't put yourselves out there, just make it the administration, make it an administrative matter that they go through and approve it.
So, so maybe the way to do this, I mean, there are groups that use it, and I think it would be nice if the groups who have been using it could still use it, but I understand what you're saying. I'm of the opinion if we get into that scenario, then we'll just shut it all down. That's the solution. That, to me,
After we get sued?
why we get to, we just shut it all down, so nobody uses it anymore. We adopt a policy. Can we do that, or is
The
that
thing is that
not?
there's freedom of speech issues. And,
You could, but you could still get sued.
yeah.
Yeah.
You know, especially if we shut it all down and then 6 months later, we reopened it again.
Yeah, it's,
Well.
yeah.
But, you know, this is the issue when you know, if someone came, you know, to be honest right now, if some group that we don't like came and said, you know, we want to rent out Coble Park, if we're renting it out to other groups, we'd have to rent it out to them.
Sure.
It just, you know, and we can't say, you know, like schools used to do it where they would allow student groups to use classroom space, but they had to be secular. And the court shot that down, saying, look, as soon as you start allowing secular student groups using it, if you have a religious student group that wants to use it, you have to give it to them. And you can't base it on their speech, you can't base it on their beliefs, you can't base it upon what types of people that organization's gonna bring.
No.
Those are all First Amendment considerations. So,
So,
the likelihood of that happening is not huge, but it does happen. We have one client where, you know, they had, to be honest, they had, I think it was a political rally that was bringing some, what they felt was extremist groups to one of their parks during the last election. So it doesn't happen a lot. Like, that's the only time I've run across it in 20 years. So I don't think there's an extreme risk, but I think you just have to realize that, you know, that could happen.
so let me ask, and I think you're right, Terry, I think that is why we never approved it.
It was why.
Yeah, that's exactly why.
I know.
That's exactly
as soon
why.
as you mentioned it.
But let me ask you, I mean, do other townships allow this, or would we just be unique if we did this? I mean,
No, most other townships have these types of policies, and allow this, and, you know, certainly, you know, every township I know allows groups to rent parks and park facilities and that.
I'm
sort
talking
of
about
thing.
the building itself, to have
But
meetings.
most townships do allow to rent out meeting rooms at their buildings, and they all run this risk.
Some of these other townships, though, have separate entrances to some of their buildings or their
Yes.
rooms.
Yeah,
Yeah, or some townships have separate meeting rooms, separate community buildings,
Yes.
yeah, okay,
you know,
Like the library.
yeah.
I mean, I see one of the problems of our building is that there's only really one room. I mean,
Here,
you
a
got
conference
a
room.
conference room, which is something that they look to run out. And I'm basically not comfortable with even taking on the risk of various entities renting out the space. And the other thing is, you also are then tying both, you basically got to make sure that even if it's during the day, people can't both be out of the building, can't leave the building. Somebody's got to be here the whole time. So, and to me, it sounds like There was a reason why you guys didn't approve it, and I think,
Yeah, that was
I'm not sure we should be continuing to let people use it,
Well,
period.
why don't you guys, you got a week,
Yeah.
so,
Well,
Yeah.
I guess I'm gonna ask the question that probably nobody wants to think about, is if we decide not to allow it to happen, what do we do about groups that are using it?
We did nothing. We just continued to allow them to
I know
use
Ernie's
it.
got
I think it was just the Schwenksville Women's Group and the Spring Mount HOA.
There was yoga, that was in the evening.
But she
Yeah,
she
that
moved or
stopped at
something, yeah.
COVID. Yeah.
And I think the Spring Mount HOA meets here once a year for their,
That's my understanding. that
And that's it.
There's two groups,
and that's
my
it.
understanding.
And they could just be grandfathered. Yeah, go ahead, Ernie.
Yes, my wife has been with the Schwanksville Women's Club for a number of years, and she has been given permission that goes back years ago now, and they're a group of elderly women that predominantly come from the lower Frederick, Schwanksville, upper Frederick area, and their group is about, right now, I think in the 30 members. They've been coming here, we've never had a problem with them. They do use the kitchen, and they go into the side door, and they've had their luncheon events here, and they have things within the certain areas within the kitchen that have been there since they started this, and they got permission from the township for that they just have certain storage areas for that. They take responsibility of cleaning up, and we've had support from the township employees. Occasionally, when they're here, they move the chairs and things to assist them. I've been here moving tables when they have meetings, and that's purely a daytime event. It's no secret, it's been here. They have insurance, they give an insurance certificate yearly, and to cover the township. And it's just a group of elderly women that get together here. They like this. They used to be at the Schwanksville Library, which has no ADA compliance with getting into their basement. And if you want to turn old women away, they vote here and live here in the township and the surrounding areas, be my guest.
I don't
think you're doing a nice thing.
I don't think we're suggesting that, Ernie. I think when we discussed this the last time, 5 years ago, we agreed to continue to allow those groups who are already here to continue to come. I think what we're talking about is expanding it to the general public. And I've been to one of those meetings, and I agree, they are very wonderful guests, and they're very quiet, and it's great to have them here. And I
You're
don't,
not too bad.
I don't know about the quiet. I know they're.
I'm only speaking for myself, but I think that, those two groups that are already here, I don't think we're talking about throwing them out. I think we're talking about opening this
Oh, I
up
understand.
to the public.
They weren't covered.
Yeah.
I don't think that you can allow one group and not allow another group just because they're grandfathered. But I'm gonna guess that's what Peter was gonna say.
Yeah, that's my understanding. You can't,
So, for instance, like with these residents that want to just have a place to meet, they're not going to have insurance because they're just a group. I mean, that's actually what brought me to bring this back in front of the board.
But
Is
how large a group is it?
a handful of residents, they're part of the HOA, but they're not representing the HOA. They just happen to live across the street here, so they happen to live. in
I mean, if there's 6 or 8 people, I mean.
I like policies because
I know.
it's not me saying no, it's, the board is it gives me guidance so that I'm not picking and choosing, or apparently you can have it put on me to turn the plan away or something, because.
no, it would be on you to say, well, we can't turn you away, you're in.
So, but that's really, I think looking for guidance, I think it accommodates who we have currently meeting, and I think long-term then whether we allow stuff to happen at night or not, then, I would agree. Yeah, I have no interest in non-business hours stuff.
So Peter, how would the Klan come under this? I mean, what I'm saying is, are they a nonprofit? Are they a educational, cultural, or artistic
They're a
group?
So, under the First Amendment, people have a right to assemble.
Right.
And, under, constitutional law, we have things that are called public spaces or limited public spaces. And when those public spaces are under control of a governmental entity, we can't pick and choose based on the beliefs or any other aspect of what groups we want to use or people we want to use those public spaces.
Right, but you still have to have a resident of Lower Frederick come in here and fill out a form and say the name of their group and their name and address.
And even that, I'd have to look at to see whether or not we could make a limitation where, like you said, the lead person or the applicant has to be a resident, or, all the members have to be residents. Even then, I'm not sure, if we open it up to that group of people who are geographically limited, that might still.
How about political stuff?
What says no political, no
I know,
partisan
are we
political
allowed to
stuff?
do the political, ban political activities too?
That was one of the things I saw, I was thinking actually probably not.
That's what I thought.
So I think one of those things, there's a lot of municipalities that have.
Well, there's a
and
lot of
and it's
places that do
Oh, yeah.
have these limits.
Because I saw
like
that
said-
on a lot of.
Yeah, they do have these limits, but it's just, you're rolling the dice.
I still maintain, if it becomes a problem, you may have to let that group meet here once, and then you can say, you end the thing, and then you're clean.
Right.
Well, but what you're saying
gonna have
is,
to let it happen once.
if there's a problem, which means if they're disruptive, right, then we can, if
No, I
people
think
come
I'm
in here and
saying
make a lot
the
of,
problem is
saying-
having a group that we don't like or we are embarrassed to have use our facilities,
You're gonna
might have to,
Right.
that might be a trigger to say, okay, no, we're done, we're not leasing out our facilities at all. Worst case scenario, that group meets once in the
They're right,
facility.
they meet here once, you say, hey, this is a pattern, we don't want it to repeat before, and you just terminate the policy.
But then we would definitely have to terminate forever.
Right.
okay.
I'm just giving you the legal possibilities. I'm not saying this is probable by any stretch of the imagination, but it does happen. There are court cases out there. And you guys need to know, kind of eyes wide open, what you're opening the township up to.
So we have a week to consider this, and then we'll
Yeah.
revisit this next week. Okay, all right. All right, here's an easy one. Park and Recreation Board, fire police requests.
I thought you were gonna say adjournment.
What? No,
said
the fire police request.
So, I put this on because the egg hunt is
Yet.
the week after our meeting, and I wanted to have the ability for them to reach out to the fire police in a timely manner. And I thought since they have their events, we're publicizing their events scheduled, that we could do an all-encompassing, blessing that they're able to use fire police for their events. So that's why it's in front of you tonight and not next week. So that way it's a timing thing, so, yeah, this should be an easy one.
So I'm just going to read the dates they're requesting. So the egg hunt on April 8th at Coble Park, Making Native Plants Work on May 13th at Cuddy Park, concert on June 22nd at Cuddy Park, concert number 2, July 27 at Cuddy Park, concert number 3, August 24th at Cuddy Park, Fall Fest on October 7th, and it's a typo, Trunk or Treat, October 22nd at Foy Park. So they're asking for approval for us to authorize the use of the Lower Frederick Fire Company Fire Police at all of these events on these dates. And these are all sponsored by the Lower Frederick Park and Recreation Board. So I'm assuming there's no questions?
Make a motion.
Someone like to make a motion? Okay, Terry, thank you. Would someone like to make a second?
I'll second.
Okay, we have Supervisor Sachs made the motion, Supervisor Orff made the second. All those in favor of these fire police requests for the Park Board signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes unanimously. All right. Told you it was an easy one. That brings us to public comment. Bob. Go ahead. Oh,
Bob Burns, Zieglerville Road. So Marla, you were at the Regional Planning Commission this month. Would you be able to give us an update on what happened there?
We had a presentation by an organization from, I believe, Lehigh Valley. I'm trying to remember. They talked about what private residents can do to naturalize their yards, rain gardens, rain barrels, planting trees and things like that. And we had a discussion about that, and they passed out some material. And then we spent most of our meeting talking about that. And then we had a very brief discussion and a handout about housing prices in Montgomery County.
Okay. Ernie, why don't you go and then I'll go after you.
Yes, I'm going to read you a report that concerns an emergency that was at 211 Silverbrook, and just give you an overview of who lives there. There's an elderly lady who lives there. She's by herself. She's more or less a hermit. Her husband passed away a couple years ago. The only way myself and a neighbor across the street from me communicate with her is via text messages. That's just the way she lives. She has 5 animals in the house. I will pick up mail after I text her, and I will drop it in a plastic bag on her front door, and I give her a call saying the mail's there and what it is, or packages that are left. She does not have much communication with the outside world. A couple of years ago, I took her over to, delivered her, she drove her car over to her shop in Spring City. I took her back several weeks later, dropped her off, left, and I said, Irene, if you want to have me start your car once in a while, or at least drive it down and get your mail and go back, do that if you want to go out shopping, but at least let me start your car up once every couple of weeks or so to make sure it runs. She's never asked me to do that, so she never leaves. Her driveway's about 200 feet long with a steep elevation. She can't walk it. And so we just try to help her out that way. My neighbor also across the street and I will cut up the trees. She's dead trees all over just to keep her driveway open. That's the part there. What it is, the subject I'm going to talk about is an emergency 211 Silverbrook Drive. I'm giving you a report to the Lower Frederick Township Board of Supervisors. First responders often are forgotten and not valued for their community service. My wife Joan and I wish to thank our first responders and their leaders for the service they provide under many circumstances. This is our most recent experience, and I hope it doesn't happen again. Evening of Friday, March 10th, ambulance and Lower Frederick police arrived at neighbors' residence to render aid. They were at this property on March 10th, well, I said that already, I'm sorry. Interior property which was unkept for a period of time. Excuse me, I'm getting twisted here. Evening of Friday, March 10th, ambulance and Lower Frederick police arrived at neighbors' residence to render aid. They were at this property which was for a period of time, and she was treated, the 75-year-old lady, and she felt better and declined delivery to a hospital. On Tuesday, March 14th, approximately 10 a.m., ambulance and police arrived at the same property to provide care and transportation for the same female who was in her second-floor bedroom. House was found to be occupied by her and 5 small dogs and in the same condition as the first visit. March 10th, her medical condition now required immediate care and transportation to a hospital. Due to the location and access to her property and her second-floor bedroom with the condition of the residence, ambulance and police requested support from Lower Frederick Fire Company. They responded, and all Lower Frederick emergency personnel developed an evacuation strategy to remove her from her home and transport her to a hospital. They left about 12:30 p.m. She was in the hospital for a period of 8 days and treated for several life-threatening health issues and is currently at a rehabilitation center. Due to the condition of the residents, emergency responders contacted the Perkiomenville SPCA to evaluate this property and condition of the 5 small dogs. Wednesday, March 15th, a Lower Frederick Township police officer 2 representatives of the Perkiomenville SPCA made entry into the home and recovered the 5 small dogs. These dogs went through many evaluations and cleanup and are being evaluated for adoption. The following Lower Frederick Township police officers: Sergeant Brian Cass, Officer Carissa Laura, Officer Michael Karminski, Plymouth Community Ambulance Lower Frederick Division personnel, and Lower Frederick Fire Company Station 52 firemen rendered support for this medical emergency under very trying conditions. Support should be given to their leaders: Lower Frederick Police Chief Paul Maxey, Lower Frederick Township Police Community Ambulance Board Representative Bill McGovern, and Chief Tom Gannon V, Lower Frederick Fire Company Station 52. Special thanks to Tracy Graham, Humane Society police officer, and her support staff from the Perkiomenville SPCA. Thanks to all our first responders for the great work they do to protect and serve us all and our great community. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. And yes, our first responders do work very hard, so I'm glad to hear that there's a happy ending to that, that she's okay, being taken care of, and so are the animals. So thank you for bringing that up, Ernie.
Okay, thank you.
Go ahead, Bob.
Bob Burns, Zieglerville Road. This one's for Carol. Carol, can you give us an update on Arcadia Station with the 2 sewer laterals going to the estate lots?
2 sewer laterals to the estate lots have actually been under construction. That's being inspected by Hydroterra, the township sewer engineer. My understanding is that they are pretty far along, and one was very close to the reducing lot line, and the other was approaching the lower estate lot. So that work has been ongoing. It's been inspected by the township sewer engineer.
Okay, so they're just running the laterals, they're not connecting to the home at this point in time, correct?
The contractor that's working right now is running the laterals. The agreement that was reached last November or so was to run the 1 lateral for the upper estate lot to the estate lot line in an easement, and the other lateral to the lower estate lot is being run over to a point where they can connect the house. I believe that's going to happen in the near future, but that's not my decision.
Right, and I think I asked Peter this question before, and I believe he said that both you and him have been working to get these laterals installed, but I did, give Jason a call the other day to let him know that I noticed that they were, getting close to completion out there. And obviously, there's 2 EDUs that would have to be paid for before they could be tied in, and I don't know how that's going to affect anything with you and them with the DEP, saying that the 41 homes have to be tied in under their permit. So thank you for your update, and I appreciate that. The other question is for the board and Jason. I guess, Jason, the sewer fund, you said owed the general fund. I know you said you were working on that reimbursement. I don't know if that's happened yet or not. Okay.
I think as I stated at the fiscal year budget review, I'm comfortable with the numbers from last year. We're going through the audit now. I think once we get through the audit and, they're doing big and wonky. But I know the board had expressed they wanted to get at least out of owing, I think, 2021, and that way and right now the sewer fund maybe will take the whole thing, but I was gonna do at least 2021 to help get it caught up, the general fund caught up.
Okay, and then I also called Jason to let him know that I had spoke to Montgomery County Parks and Rec about the crosswalk at Joe Springmount and possible some signage. There's been a lot of complaints with bicyclists coming down from Upper Frederick down to Springmount Road and ignoring the signs, if there are signs there, and they're just rolling right out into the intersection and hitting people. When I talked to the county park guy, he said, happens every place in the county.
Yeah.
He gets calls about it all the time. I asked him to reach out to Jason, and then he also said that the gentleman that's on vacation down at Plank Road takes care of our area, so I don't know if they've reached out to
Not
Jason
yet.
yet or not, but just wanted to let the board know that, you know, I called them, made contact, and they're willing to do whatever they have to do, and if they need some help, you know, if they supply signs or whatever, we need to put them up, I told them to talk to Jason, so.
All right, thank you. All right. Is there a supervisor comment?
Not tonight.
Okay, meeting's adjourned. Thanks, everyone.